In the Great Thousand Worlds, Xiao Yan and Lin Dong, two powerful figures from the lower dimension, each embarked on their own adventures and challenges. Their formidable strength attracted the attention of major factions within the Great Thousand Worlds, including the Six Mystical Sect and the Great Thousand Alliance. With the help of the Luo God Clan's leader, Xiao Yan successfully converted his Do Qi into spiritual energy, ascending to the 6th grade supreme realm. During his search for his wife, he saved Lu Tianhuang, the grandson of the 6 Mystical Sect's sect master, Liu Bei Dao, and became entangled in a conflict with the Heavenly Manor. Outside the Western Dao City, Xiao Yan clashed with the experts of the Heavenly Manor, demonstrating the power of his supreme-level humanoid fire spirit, formed from 22 different types of flames, which forced the experts to retreat. Seeking a deeper understanding of the Great Thousand Worlds, Xiao Yan ultimately decided to establish friendly relations with the 6 Mystical Sect and visit them as a guest. Meanwhile, during Lin Dong's process of assimilating spiritual energy, he was at his most vulnerable, so Ling Qingzhu and Lin Qingtan stood guard to protect him. However, they encountered interference from the mid-5th grade supreme, Liang Ancestor, who harbored improper intentions toward Lin Dong's wife, Ling Qingzhu. During Lin Dong's critical moment of assimilation, Ling Qingzhu and Qingtan fought valiantly to protect him from outside disturbances. In the face of attacks from Liang Ancestor and other supreme experts, Ling Qingzhu even detonated one of Lin Dong's 8 ancestral talismans, the Flame Ancestral Talisman, to counter Liang Ancestor. At that moment, members of the Great Thousand Alliance arrived and offered assistance, with Xiang showcasing immense power capable of engaging Liang Ancestor in fierce combat. Lin Dong eventually completed his spiritual energy assimilation and emerged at the crucial moment, wielding 5 divine artifacts capable of taking human form to effortlessly eliminate Liang Ancestor, saving Ling Qingzhu and Qingtan from peril. After the battle, Xiang conversed with Lin Dong, inquiring whether he was aware of the extraterritorial evil clan and provided information about the demon clan. In the previous chapter, as Lin Dong was undergoing spiritual energy assimilation, Ling Qingzhu fought against Liang Ancestor to protect him. On this vast sea, countless figures gathered, forming a dense, black ring that encircled a vast ocean area stretching thousands of miles. The sky was shrouded in dark clouds, with millions of lightning bolts flashing wildly, and a violent energy turned the entire world into chaos. All eyes were focused on the center of this ocean because there, a massive ice land floated above the sea. A snow-covered land formed by terrifying power. A colossal array, tens of thousands of feet in size, hovered in the void above the ice land. 8 mysterious runes were positioned at the 8 points of the array. As the grand array operated, it turned the sea below into a land of ice and snow, while the seawater outside the icy land began to boil. A gigantic black hole spread out from the array, like a vortex swallowing the heavens, forcibly pulling the spiritual energy from thousands of miles around and pouring it into the center of the array, where a tiny figure stood. Everyone understood that this person from the lower dimension was undergoing spiritual energy assimilation and could not be disturbed. Suddenly, at the edge of the icy land, a ripple spread out in the space like water, and an ancient figure appeared, exuding an aura that made the entire world tremble. Liang Ancestor, a mid-5th grade supreme, was a formidable force on the distant continent, a sea region with 7 continents, later renamed Liang Continent after Liang Ancestor broke through to the 9th grade supreme and claimed it. He had developed lustful intentions toward Lin Dong's wife, Ling Qingzhu, under the instigation of several 2nd and 3rd grade supremes, and had come here to take her away. As soon as Liang Ancestor appeared, a sharp sword aura, as if it could slice through the heavens, extended from the icy land ahead. Accompanied by a massive crack in the ice land, the aura instantly reached Liang Ancestor. A woman with spirit. I like that. Liang Ancestor suddenly chuckled as he saw the sword aura, powerful enough to slice through mountains, slashing toward him. He raised his hand, flicked his finger, and the space ahead shattered. A pitch-black spatial fissure, thousands of feet long, blasted toward the sword aura. The sword aura collided with the pitch-black spatial fissure, and the violent shockwave immediately devastated the surrounding area for hundreds of miles. The sword aura, seemingly unstoppable, shattered in an instant upon contact with the spatial fissure. The fissure, however, was only momentarily halted before it continued its assault toward a delicate figure ahead. Ling Qingzhu gripped her 3-foot-long blue blade sword tightly. Facing the serpentine black fissure, she did not panic. Instead, she calmly closed her eyes, and a mysterious power, as if it could penetrate the heavens, spread out. The power of the supreme deity. A soft whisper escaped Ling Qingzhu's lips. As her voice fell, Liang Ancestor, who had been observing her from a distance of 10,000 feet, slightly furrowed his brows. A nearly invisible sword aura, radiating an extreme sharpness, shot through the air like a thin silver line. The spatial fissure that had stretched across the ice land vanished into nothingness. From miles away, all eyes were fixed on the delicate figure hovering in the air. The woman, holding the 3-foot blue blade sword, looked like a celestial fairy descended from the heavens, untainted and serene. She had just blocked an attack from Liang Ancestor, a mid-5th grade supreme. A woman who had not even reached the supreme realm had managed to fend off an attack from a mid-5th grade supreme. Even though the latter's attack was casual, it was not something that anyone below the 2nd or 3rd grade supreme could withstand, let alone someone like Ling Qingzhu, who hadn't even reached the supreme realm. Moreover, no one had clearly seen the method that the woman had just used to block Liang Ancestor's attack. "Qingzhu, are you all right?" Another figure, clad in black, suddenly appeared beside Ling Qingzhu. It was Lin Qingtan, who had accompanied Lin Dong to the Great Thousand Worlds. With her limited strength and spiritual energy, she could only keep an eye on the ill-intentioned individuals surrounding them. Of course, many of these people were beyond her ability to fend off. The fact that they still stood safely on this icy land, should that be considered mere luck? It seemed that being a beautiful woman had its advantages, making some people hesitant to act rashly to preserve their own reputation. Ling Qingzhu, her face slightly pale from the earlier exchange, gently nodded to Qingtan, indicating that she was not seriously harmed. "Just hold on a little longer. Lin Dong is almost done," Ling Qingzhu murmured softly to Qingtan, biting her red lips. Suddenly, more spatial ripples spread out in front of them, causing Ling Qingzhu and Qingtan's expressions to change drastically. 7 figures appeared, and although 4 of them looked somewhat disheveled, their auras were far beyond what Ling Qingzhu and Qingtan could withstand. These were 7 supreme experts, 2 at the 2nd grade supreme, 3 at the 3rd grade supreme, and the last 2 at the 4th grade supreme. Such a lineup could easily make an ordinary 5th grade supreme retreat. "Heh, 2 women. Let's settle the score now," sneered a man in yellow, his clothes tattered, his strength at the 3rd grade supreme. He looked at Ling Qingzhu with a twisted grin. "Now that the kid's gone, let's see how you fight back." As his voice fell, a suffocating aura spread out, causing cracks to appear on the icy land below. "Qingtan, retreat quickly." Seeing the 7 figures suddenly appear before them, Ling Qingzhu knew they were beyond her ability to contend with. She couldn't rely on the sword strike she had just used with the power of the supreme deity. Such a technique could not be used repeatedly. Without it, they couldn't even match a 1st grade supreme. With a sharp shout, Ling Qingzhu grabbed Qingtan's hand and swiftly retreated. "Qingzhu, what should we do?" Qingtan, clearly panicked, asked urgently. "We fight. Even if we die, we must not let Lin Dong be disturbed." Ling Qingzhu's expression was solemn as she stared at the 7 figures ahead, none of whom had any good intentions. Suddenly, a familiar image flashed through her mind. On the Chaos Demon Sea, she had fought desperately to shield Lin Dong from the alien demon emperor, whose power was enough to destroy the world. Just as she was about to burn her life force to buy time for Lin Dong, an arm had pulled her back. "That plain-faced young man. Please don't do this again. Don't make me experience that pain a second time. All right?" Her heart trembled as she bit down on her red lips. "Qingtan, we can't let either of us die." He wouldn't allow it. As soon as Ling Qingzhu finished speaking, the 7 supreme experts in the distance began to prepare their attacks. As the overwhelming pressure of their spiritual energy descended upon them, the icy land below started to quake. "Hmph, let's see how you run this time." The man in the yellow robe, with strength at the 3rd grade supreme, took a step forward, reaching out his hand and then making a grasping motion in the air. "This isn't good, Qingtan, run." Ling Qingzhu's face turned pale with panic as she shouted at Qingtan. However, before Ling Qingzhu could finish her sentence, her expression changed dramatically. The space around her and Qingtan began to warp and twist, and before they could react, the fluctuating space formed 2 prison-like enclosures, about 10 feet in size, trapping them separately. A prison made of space, the formidable technique of a supreme expert. A torrent of spiritual energy surged out from Ling Qingzhu's body, and she swung her 3-foot blue blade sword at the spatial prison. The sharpness of her sword caused the space to warp, but even so, it couldn't break through the prison. Not far away, Lin Qingtan also summoned a large, black scythe, the blade of which seemed sharp enough to tear through the void. However, when she slashed at the spatial prison, it too failed to break through. "Hmph. If Liang Ancestor hadn't insisted on capturing you alive, I wouldn't have shown any mercy. I would have slapped you both around first," the man in the yellow robe sneered, looking at Ling Qingzhu and Qingtan trapped in the spatial prisons. "Heh, Xuanzi, you're probably the only one here not interested in these women. You still dare to slap them? I wouldn't want to harm such beauty." Another supreme expert chuckled as he eyed Ling Qingzhu and Qingtan in the spatial prisons. "Next, let's enjoy the show of that brat getting killed," the yellow-robed man said, casting a glance at the scene unfolding behind him. A flash of light, moving with a speed that seemed to pierce the heavens, flickered several times before arriving outside the massive array. Liang Ancestor stood with his hands behind his back, gazing at Lin Dong, who was suspended in the center of the array. A mocking smile curled on his lips. "Kid, you can only blame yourself for coming to the Great Thousand Worlds at the wrong time. If you were given another year or so to cultivate, I wouldn't dare touch you," Liang Ancestor muttered with a cold sneer. He slowly raised his withered hand, and the vast spiritual energy behind him condensed into a tidal wave that blotted out the sun. The terrifying might of this display caused the gathered experts in the surrounding heavens and earth to gasp in shock. If struck by such an attack, even an ordinary 4th-grade Supreme would be gravely injured. This was truly the power of a 5th-grade Supreme. Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of miles away, in the endless sea, stood a solitary island. On this island, towering peaks rose thousands of feet into the sky. Suddenly, a buzzing sound echoed from one of the peaks, and a formation, tens of feet in size, appeared as clear light materialized atop the mountain. As the light dissipated, 4 figures emerged on the peak. All 4 were clad in black cloaks, with the leader appearing to be no more than 30 years old. The 4 figures looked around, seemingly sensing something. "Is it around here?" asked one of the black-clad men. "Sect Master, a being from a super dimension has descended here. We've been sent to guide him to join our Great Thousand Alliance," another man replied. "Ah, it's usually easier to recruit those who have broken through the shackles of ordinary dimensions. But those from advanced or super dimensions are always so prideful. It's not easy to subdue them," the last black-clad man remarked. "Which direction should we head?" the first man asked, turning to the young leader. However, the young man didn't respond to his subordinate. His gaze remained fixed on the distant horizon, gradually growing more serious. He could sense an immense gathering of auras tens of thousands of miles away in that direction. Amid this dense cluster of auras, there were even some at the supreme level. They were all members of the Great Thousand Alliance, with the leader being the young master of the alliance. "Young Master Su." The other 3 men called out again to the young man, who was now deep in thought. "This is bad." The young man, referred to as Young Master Su, suddenly turned pale. He realized that among those vast auras, there was one particularly terrifying one. What shocked him wasn't just its strength, but the nature of the energy it emitted. The young man could distinctly feel that this aura seemed to be composed of 2 entirely different energies. One was the familiar spiritual energy, but it was being suppressed by another strange force. The two energies were clashing fiercely. Damn it! That person is undergoing spiritual energy assimilation. The young man's exclamation echoed in the air. As soon as he spoke, his figure shot forward at a speed that pierced the heavens, racing toward the sea area tens of thousands of miles away. In a single breath, he had covered 1,000 miles. Seeing the young man's urgency, the three men exchanged glances, nodded, and immediately followed suit, their figures moving swiftly to catch up. The scene shifts to Xiao Yan, who is accompanied by an elder dressed in white. This elder is none other than Liu Bei Dao from the Sixth Mystical Sect. The lower dimension sure does produce talent. A sixth-grade supreme. Such potential is rare even in the higher dimensions. As the members of the heavenly manor dispersed, the elder in white, who had approached earlier to ease the tension, turned to Xiao Yan with a smile. Every year, thousands of people break through the shackles of the lower dimension and descend into the Luo God Grand Domain. But only a handful in the past century have reached your level at such a young age, remarked a woman in a purple robe not far away, smiling as well. This junior is new here and unfamiliar with the ways of the Great Thousand Worlds. I hope the seniors present can offer some guidance. Xiao Yan cupped his hands respectfully towards the group. No need for seniors. The Great Thousand Worlds, like your lower dimension, respects the strong. Besides, I've never seen anyone bring dozens of supreme powerhouses into the Great Thousand Worlds at once. If you were to make a move, I'm afraid no one here could match you, commented a red-robed man hovering nearby, glancing in amazement at the 22 Supremes standing behind Xiao Yan. Oh, they're my fire spirits, not humans, Xiao Yan responded with a faint smile. With a wave of his sleeve, the 22 Supremes behind him suddenly ignited with flames of various colors, astonishing Liu Bei Dao, who stood nearby. The 22 figures transformed into 22 flames of different hues, gently swirling around Xiao Yan. The temperature of the surrounding area soared, driven by the flames. At that moment, Xiao Yan appeared like a king of 10,000 flames. Those are some powerful flames. They must be from the 100 million flames ranking, the elder in white observed, stroking his beard as he looked at the flames circling Xiao Yan. Wait, I recognize that one. It's the chaotic yellow flame, ranked 4,673 on the 100 million flames ranking, exclaimed the red-robed man, his gaze locking onto a deep yellow flame among those surrounding Xiao Yan, clearly astonished. Xiao Yan was even more surprised. On the Do-Chi continent, the chaotic yellow flame was ranked 23rd on the flame ranking. Yet, here in the Great Thousand Worlds, there was a similar ranking, the 100 million flames ranking. And the chaotic yellow flame, which was in the top 23 on the Do-Chi continent, was only ranked over 4,600th on this list? That's the Sea Heart flame, ranked 4,100 on the 100 million flames ranking. And the Fallen Heart flame, ranked 3,880. The 3,000 Burning Flame, ranked 3,451. The Golden Emperor's Sky Burning Flame, ranked 763. The Pure Lotus Demon Flame, ranked 439. And the Void Swallowing Flame, ranked 334. Impressive flames! The red-robed man nodded approvingly as he identified the various flames on Xiao Yan. Senior, what exactly is this 100 million flames ranking? Xiao Yan asked, his face now filled with shock as the red-robed man recognized most of the flames he had. The Pure Lotus Demon Flame and the Void Swallowing Flame were among the top 3 on the flame ranking of the Do-Chi continent. Yet, in the Great Thousand Worlds, they couldn't even break into the top 300? Wasn't this a harsh slap in the face for the flame ranking? You must have just arrived from the lower dimension, so it's normal not to know much about the Great Thousand Worlds, a calm voice sounded. Liu Bei Dao slowly stepped through the air towards Xiao Yan. Perhaps in your lower dimension, there are also some so-called flame rankings, where the more powerful flames in your dimension are ranked by strength. However, the true flame ranking should be based on the 100 million flames ranking of the Great Thousand Worlds. As the confluence of all lower dimensions, this ranking includes the top 100,000 flames from both the lower dimensions and the Great Thousand Worlds. Typically, flames from the higher dimensions can make it into the top 10,000, but those in the top 100 are beyond the reach of any lower dimension. They exist only in the Great Thousand Worlds and are naturally under the control of the major powers here, Liu Beidao explained to Xiao Yan. Upon hearing Liu Beidao's words, Xiao Yan finally understood the reality. It turned out that the 100 million flames ranking gathered all the strange flames from both the lower dimensions and the Great Thousand Worlds. Not a single flame from the lower dimensions could break into the top 100, which explained why even the void-swallowing flame was only ranked in the 300s. Compared to this ranking, the flame ranking of the Do-Chi continent was nothing more than child's play. Do any of the seniors recognize this flame? Xiao Yan suddenly raised his brow, channeling all his spiritual power. The different flames swirling around him converged toward his palm, and the immense power generated from the compression distorted the surrounding space. A flame that constantly changed colors appeared in Xiao Yan's hand. It was the king of all flames, the Imperial flame, formed by fusing 22 different flames. As Xiao Yan merged all the flames, Liu Beidao and the others, who had been relatively calm until now, were suddenly taken aback. This reaction wasn't merely because the flame's aura approached that of a 7th-grade supreme. 2. Tuasha Imperial Flame. Isn't that the flame of that person from 10,000 years ago? The red-robed man exclaimed, his voice trembling with astonishment. The group's reaction was far beyond Xiao Yan's expectations. Xiao Yan knew that the Imperial flame far surpassed the void-swallowing flame and other top-tier flames in terms of power, but he didn't think that alone would warrant such a reaction. And what was this Tuasha Imperial flame they were referring to? 10,000 years ago, the ancient Emperor Tuasha did indeed devour the other 21 flames to become the first Imperial flame, but whether Tuasha had later arrived in the Great Thousand Worlds was something Xiao Yan couldn't confirm. Could it be that the Imperial flame was called Tuasha Imperial Flame in the Great Thousand Worlds because of the ancient Emperor Tuasha? Senior, what's the deal with this Imperial flame? Xiao Yan asked, puzzled by everyone's reactions. By heavens, this is incredible. The red-robed man gasped, taking a deep breath, and then spoke with a tone full of awe. The Tuasha Imperial Flame is a flame with its own spirit, born from the fusion of spiritual flames. When that person first arrived 10,000 years ago, this flame was only ranked around 160th, but it possessed the ability to devour other flames. After thousands of years of devouring, its power surged, eventually breaking into the top 5 of the 100 million flames ranking. It was later subdued by an ancestor of the Fire Spirit clan and became the clan's guardian flame. The Tuasha Imperial Flame is currently ranked 3rd on the 100 million flames ranking. Upon hearing this, Xiao Yan's heart trembled. He knew that the ancient Emperor Tuasha had also practiced the flame mantra, but he hadn't expected that this unknown level technique could elevate a flame to such a terrifying extent. The ancient Emperor Tuasha was undoubtedly the most formidable person in the history of the Do-Chi continent. Not even the era of flourishing Do emperors from 10,000 years ago could compare to the strength of this one man. Perhaps the gap between an ordinary Do emperor and the ancient Emperor Tuasha was even greater than the difference between a Do Wang and a Do Sheng. So, Senior, is the Tuasha Imperial Flame currently in the Fire Spirit clan? Xiao Yan asked. Correct, the red-robed man replied. The Fire Spirit clan? What kind of clan is that? Xiao Yan inquired further. Hey, brother, if we keep talking like this, it'll be dark soon, Liu Beidao's calm laughter interrupted, just as the red-robed man was about to answer Xiao Yan's question. The Great Thousand Worlds are vast, and it's normal for those of you from the lower dimensions to find them unfamiliar. But explaining everything in this world would take more knowledge than we could ever accumulate. You saved my grandson earlier, so may I invite you to visit our 6th mystical sect? Rest assured, we won't try to recruit you like the Heavenly Manor did. It's just to express our gratitude. Yes, just as Liu Beidao said, it would take ages to cover everything about the Great Thousand Worlds. If we go on like this, with you asking and us answering, we might not be done for months, the red-robed man added with a chuckle. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. Brother, if you're interested, feel free to visit our Azure Cloud sect anytime. You're always welcome, the elder in white also said to Xiao Yan with a smile. He then waved his hand, and his figure vanished into the heavens, leaving behind a teasing remark. Liu Beidao, you old rascal, don't trick him into joining your sect. That wouldn't be fair to the rest of us. Liu Beidao didn't respond, and Xiao Yan respectfully bowed in the direction where the elder in white had disappeared. You can ask more about the situation in the Great Thousand Worlds at the Sixth Mystical Sect, the red-robed man suggested. The Sixth Mystical Sect used to be one of the 10 guardian forces of the Luo God clan. They've spent years fighting battles outside, so they know much more about the Great Thousand Worlds than we do. With that, he moved swiftly, darting towards the distant horizon. I have a lot of internal affairs to attend to at the Red Mountain Pavilion, so I won't stay any longer. Not far away, the woman in purple stretched lazily. She had been observing quietly all this time, not participating in the conversation. Her gaze shifted to Xiao Yan, and she spoke with a playful tone, "Little brother, I'd like to be your friend." Whatever," Xiao Yan responded, a bit speechless. Clearly, he found her approach of wanting to be friends after just meeting rather odd. "Whatever it is then. You've got quite the talent, so you'll have to look after your big sister in the future," the woman in purple said with a charming smile before her figure disappeared into the void. As Xiao Yan watched the others gradually leave, a slight smile curled at the corners of his mouth. Looking around, he found that aside from the people from the Heavenly Manor, he had a favorable impression of everyone else in West Dao City. The once lively sky had now returned to a tranquil emptiness. Come on, let's head to my Sixth Mystical Sect. You're a distinguished guest, Liu Beidao said with a smile, and along with Liu Tianhuang, he led the way towards a distant mountain range. Xiao Yan shrugged and followed along. Meanwhile, as Xiao Yan followed Liu Beidao to the Sixth Mystical Sect, a spectacular scene was unfolding billions of miles away. The scene shifts to where Lin Dong was undergoing spiritual energy assimilation. This place was an expansive, seemingly endless icy landscape. The overwhelming cold had transformed the entire region into a land of snow and ice. But as the view expanded, a more terrifying scene became apparent. Surrounding this vast icy expanse was an endless ocean, so vast that even the thousands of miles of ice and snow seemed insignificant in comparison. However, the strangeness of this place was beyond imagination. The ocean beyond the immense icy land had turned a crimson red, stretching for nearly 10,000 miles. The boiling hot seawater, situated beneath this frozen terrain, had persisted for an unknown amount of time without melting the ice. This was an ice field floating on scalding water, an anomaly, to say the least. Above the sky, thick clouds loomed, and countless bolts of lightning descended continuously, their violent energy causing the spiritual energy in this region to become incredibly chaotic. Suddenly, the sound of something piercing through the air echoed, and soon, figures appeared, flying from the distant horizon. Though numerous, none dared to approach the boiling sea. How terrifying! Who could that person be? A young man hovering in midair stared at the crimson ocean ahead, sucking in a breath of cold air. The battle here ended nearly half a month ago, yet the phenomenon in this area hasn't dissipated. Another man remarked, equally shocked. All eyes were fixed on the crimson ocean. In the middle of it, a vast ice field, thousands of miles in diameter, still floated. But as they observed the battered ice land, their expressions froze. A section of the ice had collapsed, revealing the crimson seawater beneath. The exposed area formed the shape of a dragon's claw, as if it had been forcefully blasted out. A massive dragon claw mark, nearly 10,000 feet in size, was imprinted on the ice field. Some people recalled the cataclysmic battle that had taken place here half a month ago, sighing in awe. The sea of lightning above poured down towards Liang Ancestor below, while the crimson ring of light surrounding the icy land began to tremble violently. The intense heat distorted the space, and waves of scorching energy swept towards Liang Ancestor. In the sky, an ice phoenix, large enough to block out the sun, flapped its enormous wings. A colossal white torrent engulfed the entire area around Liang Ancestor, leaving no room for escape. 3 terrifying attacks, each capable of destroying the heavens and earth, simultaneously, converged on Liang Ancestor. This was Ling Qingzhu's full-powered strike, a level of attack that even someone at the peak of the third grade supreme would have to evade. However, a sinister smile curled at the corner of Wu Liang Ancestor's mouth. His wrinkled hand slowly rose, and a burst of gray spiritual energy erupted, forming a massive bell 100 feet wide above his head. The immense sea of lightning instantly swallowed the black bell, and the overwhelming power of the flame ancestral talisman crashed onto it. The destructive force was so immense that it tore black fissures in the space around them, and the area within 1,000 miles was filled with turbulent spiritual energy. Anyone below the supreme level who entered would be utterly annihilated. The gigantic ice phoenix let out a shriek as the enormous white torrent followed, freezing the sea of lightning and the crimson waves in an instant. A colossal block of ice, nearly 10,000 feet in size, appeared in the air. Within it, one side shimmered with blue lightning, the other with red flames, and in the center was the frozen gray bell. Could it be that Wu Liang Ancestor had been sealed within the ice? As this thought crossed everyone's minds, Ling Qingzhu, standing in the distance, clenched her jade-like hand around her sword, her expression growing tense. She stared at the massive block of ice, where the aura within, rather than diminishing, seemed undeterred. Everything fell into a dead silence, and when the sound of cracking ice emerged from the ice block, Ling Qingzhu's pupils suddenly contracted. Fine cracks began spreading across the massive block of ice, and within moments, they covered the entire surface. With a deafening explosion, the enormous block of ice shattered into countless fragments. A terrifying gray spiritual energy rippled out from the shards, and the entire sky seemed to freeze in time. All the shattered ice fragments hovered motionless in midair. A clear bell toll echoed from the center of the ice fragments, resonating across the heavens and earth. A gigantic gray bell, 100 feet wide, floated among the ice shards. As it reverberated, the bell dissipated, revealing an elderly figure. Despite Ling Qingzhu's full-powered strike, Wu Liang Ancestor remained unharmed. His demeanor was as composed as ever, causing Ling Qingzhu, who stood a short distance away, to clench her fists tightly. Although she had anticipated that her attack wouldn't be able to threaten Wu Liang Ancestor, she hadn't expected that her full power would seem so feeble in his eyes. No wonder the others had fled to bring this old monster here. The gap between a first-grade supreme and a fifth-grade supreme was simply too vast. Were they really destined to fall here today? That Lin Dong. If he couldn't find Huan, there was no way he would return. But how could they have anticipated the current situation before they arrived? I know you're just stalling for time for that kid, Wu Liang Ancestor said with a grin, noticing Ling Qingzhu's grim expression. But are you so sure that after assimilating his spiritual energy, he'll be able to defeat me? With barely the strength of a third-grade supreme? And that girl over there isn't bad either. If you both come with me, I might consider sparing the boy, just crippling him instead of killing him. Wu Liang Ancestor's gaze shifted to the distant Qingtan, who was being cornered by 7 supremes, and he spoke with a casual tone. He knew all too well that someone like Lin Dong, who had broken through from a super dimension, had an unimaginably frightening future ahead of him. At this point, Wu Liang Ancestor and the others had thoroughly antagonized Lin Dong and his companions. To resolve this conflict, the only solution was to either kill Lin Dong or leave him crippled. A cripple would no longer pose a threat in the future, and it was clear that Wu Liang Ancestor had chosen to cripple Lin Dong instead of killing him, likely to give Ling Qingzhu and Qingtan a way out. If Lin Dong were killed outright, the 2 women would probably fight to the death, and although Wu Liang Ancestor wasn't afraid, it would be a shame. After all, such extraordinary women were rare even in the Great Thousand Worlds. But if Lin Dong were merely crippled, at least he would still be alive. Surely, the 2 women would understand the implications. Dream on. A cold voice came from Ling Qingzhu, and then she channeled all the remaining spiritual energy within her. She was prepared to stake her life in this final clash. Don't even think about harming a single hair on Lin Dong. Oh, the deal is off, then. I guess I'll have to knock you out and take you away, Wu Liang Ancestor chuckled, his expression unchanged. With his hands behind his back, an even more immense aura than before began to envelop the area. I wasn't even serious earlier. Gray spiritual energy instantly shrouded the area within 1,000 miles. On the ocean surrounding the icy land, countless gigantic waves surged. The countless large ice chunks floating in midair were now being corroded by the gray spiritual energy. In the next moment, they shot towards Ling Qingzhu like falling meteors. It was as if a rain of meteors was descending from the heavens, an apocalyptic scene. Each massive ice chunk carried enough power to obliterate a first-grade supreme in an instant. Faced with the incoming ice chunks, Ling Qingzhu did not dare to be careless. She slowly closed her eyes, and once again, the sense of merging with heaven and earth, derived from the power of the supreme deity, enveloped her. An invisible force filled her entire being. She tightened her grip on the 3-foot blue blade sword in her hand, and, with a light step in the void, launched herself directly towards the falling ice chunks. Instead of retreating, she advanced, confronting Wu Liang Ancestor's true offensive head-on. The crisp, melodious sound of the sword's edge echoed softly. A massive ice chunk blocking Ling Qingzhu's path was sliced in two, the cut surface smooth as a mirror. The enormous ice chunks rained down on Ling Qingzhu, but under her sword, they were like tofu. That power of yours is truly fascinating. Wu Liang Ancestor's smile didn't waver as he watched Ling Qingzhu close in on him. He could sense that Ling Qingzhu was using a very peculiar power, one that she herself couldn't fully control, and its reserves were quite limited. When Ling Qingzhu sliced through the last massive ice chunk, Wu Liang Ancestor, still wearing a calm smile, appeared before her. He stood in the air, seemingly oblivious to Ling Qingzhu's approach, without even deploying any form of defense, simply standing there as she drew near. The sword, imbued with the power of the supreme deity, slashed down furiously towards the back of Wu Liang Ancestor's head. Just as the sword was about to make contact with his neck, less than 10 centimeters away, Wu Liang Ancestor finally raised his hand. Bending his thumb and forefinger, he flicked his thumb outwards, and it collided with the sharp blade, which was powerful enough to slice through space. Ling Qingzhu's pupil shrank suddenly as she saw a thin crack rapidly spreading from the blade's body. In the next instant, the entire sword shattered. Before Ling Qingzhu could react, an old hand was already resting on her cheek, slowly sliding down her neck. Wu Liang Ancestor was blatantly violating Ling Qingzhu. 6 massive supreme Dharmakayas simultaneously launched a powerful punch towards Lin Dong below. However, as the enormous fists approached within several hundred feet of Lin Dong, the space behind him began to warp. In an instant, the distorted space transformed into a nearly 100-foot-wide void passage. Under countless gazes, 5 figures from the Great Thousand Alliance emerged from the spatial passage. Leading them was a young man dressed in black, his handsome appearance belied by the dangerous aura emanating from him. A presence so intimidating that even supreme powerhouses felt uneasy. The young man's face was grim as he surveyed the surrounding heavens and earth. When he looked at the 6 gigantic fists descending from the sky, an immense and boundless spiritual energy surged forth from within him. "Get lost." A deep voice rumbled from the young man's mouth. He punched upward into the void, and the terrifying shockwaves of spiritual energy shattered the space itself. As the space fractured, a sky-covering wave of spiritual energy swept out. The 6 massive fists in the sky were immediately repelled by an even more fearsome force. In the distance, Wu Liang Ancestor's face finally showed a hint of seriousness as he gazed at the 5 figures that had suddenly appeared in the heavens. Ling Qingzhu's expression also faltered slightly. The appearance of these individuals, along with their interception of the supreme attacks, was beyond her expectations. However, she refrained from speaking, as she sensed no hostility from these unexpected arrivals. On the contrary, Ling Qingzhu could feel that these people were on their side. "It's time to get to work. Whether we can get them interested in the Great Thousand Alliance depends on how we perform." A faint, yet murderous voice came from the black-clad young man. As his words fell, the 4 black-clad men behind him shot forward, and vast spiritual energy erupted from within them, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. Of the 4, 2 had reached the 4th grade supreme level, while the other 2 were at the peak of the 3rd grade supreme. for black silhouettes tore through the air, coming to a halt several thousand feet in front of the 6 supreme powerhouses. Who are you? And why are you interfering in our business? Wu Liang Ancestor appeared before the 4 black-clad men, blocking their path. Why don't you use that intellect you use to bully women and figure it out? A voice filled with mocking sarcasm rang out as the black-clad young man appeared in front of the 4 men. You. Wu Liang Ancestor's face flushed with anger at the young man's words. Immediately, a terrifying wave of spiritual energy swept out from within him, pressing down on the 5 figures before him. The space within 10,000 feet began to groan under the pressure of his aura. Heh, what a joke! The black-clad young man sneered as he observed the overwhelming gray spiritual energy surging towards him. A terrifying black spiritual energy exploded from within him, just as powerful as Wu Liang Ancestors. This young man in black was also a 5th grade supreme. In the distance, astonished gazes were fixed on these supreme powerhouses who had suddenly appeared. No one had expected that at such a critical moment, powerful figures would come to the aid of these newcomers from the lower dimension. Yet, the words spoken by the black-clad young man earlier left everyone feeling ashamed. The Great Thousand Worlds, as the confluence of all lower dimensions, was a new frontier for those who arrived from the lower dimensions. For the inhabitants of the Great Thousand Worlds, these newcomers were akin to visiting guests. However, this time, when a few from the lower dimension were humiliated upon their arrival in the Great Thousand Worlds, those who originally belonged to the Great Thousand Worlds had merely stood by and watched, thoroughly disgracing themselves. A graceful figure streaked through the sky towards Qingtan. Within moments, Ling Qingzhu appeared beside her. Gazing at the spatial prison that bound Qingtan, Ling Qingzhu struck it with her palm, shattering the prison entirely. Qingtan, who had been trapped inside, was finally freed. Qingzhu sis. Tears welled up in Qingtan's eyes as she threw herself into Ling Qingzhu's arms. The earlier situation had truly terrified her. How is Lin Dong? Ling Qingzhu asked, looking past Qingtan towards a massive formation. The 8 ancestral talismans were suspended at various points of the formation, and within it was Lin Dong. However, Lin Dong had no detectable energy fluctuations around him. The only sign of life was his faint breathing. Ling Qingzhu's expression tightened as she surveyed the surroundings. The previously raging spiritual energy had completely vanished. The spiritual energy within thousands of miles had likely been absorbed into Lin Dong's body. But with such a massive amount of power, why was there no sign of it on Lin Dong? Qingtan shook her head slightly, indicating that she, too, had no idea what was happening. He'll be fine, Ling Qingzhu murmured softly, and Qingtan nodded in agreement. Miss, you can't just sit back while we're fighting for you, can you? Suddenly, a calm voice reached Ling Qingzhu's ears. Recognizing the voice, she turned her gaze towards the distant confrontation. The voice had come from the black-clad young man. The battle ahead isn't something you can participate in. Stay by Lin Dong's side, Ling Qingzhu instructed Qingtan, then released her from the embrace. After seeing her nod in agreement, Ling Qingzhu's figure flickered as she transformed into a stream of light, flying towards the distant confrontation. As Ling Qingzhu rushed out, Qingtan quickly retreated to stand guard in front of Lin Dong. The intense pressure from earlier had significantly lessened. A figure in a yellow robe tore through the sky, appearing beside Wu Liang Ancestor and his group. It was the yellow-robed Supreme. Simultaneously, a graceful figure emerged from the horizon and floated beside the black-clad youth and his companions. Are you really going to interfere in my affairs? Wu Liang Ancestor coldly asked the black-clad youth standing before him. Why don't you take a guess? The black-clad youth responded with the same playful tone. Even with help, you won't stop me from taking these 2 women today. Wu Liang Ancestor sneered, casting a taunting glance at Ling Qingzhu. You're quite confident, the black-clad youth remarked, smiling at Wu Liang Ancestor. Then, with a subtle movement of his lips, he sent a message only Ling Qingzhu could hear. Do you trust us? Ling Qingzhu was momentarily taken aback by his words. The black-clad youth had referred to himself as Xiang, and the latter part of his message was clearly a question directed at her. His words were brief, but the meaning was clear. For now, Ling Qingzhu replied. That's enough. As Xiang's words echoed, the spiritual energy surrounding him surged violently, and his figure shot forward, heading straight towards Wu Liang Ancestor and his 8 companions. Seeing the black-clad youth charge without warning, Wu Liang Ancestor's heart trembled. Even if you are at the same level as I am, my combat experience is far beyond what someone of your generation could possibly compare to. With a cold snort, Wu Liang Ancestor's vast spiritual energy coalesced behind him into a massive vortex spanning thousands of feet. From within the swirling vortex, a colossal gray figure tore through the spatial rift and stepped out. A Supreme Dharmakaya that can't even make it onto the 99 Supreme Dharmakayas ranking. Do you really think it's worth showing off? A sinister smile spread across Xiang's face. Behind him, a black vortex of spiritual energy formed, shattering the space around it. From within emerged a Supreme Dharmakaya, no weaker than Wu Liang Ancestors. However, in terms of power, it was evident that Xiang's Supreme Dharmakaya was stronger. The 99 Supreme Dharmakayas refer to the top 99 Supreme Dharmakayas recorded in the Great Thousand Worlds, ranked among millions of others. Of course, this list doesn't necessarily include the absolute strongest Supreme Dharmakayas, as the Great Thousand Worlds are vast, and there may be many powerful Dharmakayas yet to be discovered, some of which could potentially rank among the top 99. The Supreme Dharmakaya summoned by Xiang was ranked 89th on the 99 Supreme Dharmakayas ranking. 4 figures shot out from behind Xiang. The 2 4th-grade Supremes immediately engaged Wu Liang Ancestors' 2 4th-grade Supremes. The remaining 2 black-clad men, both at the peak of the 3rd-grade Supreme level, each took on one of the enemy's 3rd-grade Supremes and 2 2nd-grade Supremes. However, the enemy still had 2 3rd-grade Supremes left. At this moment, a graceful figure stepped forward. Ling Qingzhu moved to block the path of the 2 3rd-grade Supremes. It seems you've miscalculated, one of the 3rd-grade Supremes remarked with a sneer, hovering in the air alongside his companion. They didn't believe that someone like Ling Qingzhu, with her mere 1st-grade Supreme cultivation, could hold off both of them at once. That's not necessarily true. Suddenly, a calm voice echoed from afar. 2 beams of light shot towards them from Lin Dong's direction. One was a gray rune, and the other was a brown stone tablet. Under Ling Qingzhu's astonished gaze, the gray rune and brown stone tablet hovered beside her. The gray rune spun and transformed into a figure clad in gray, while the stone tablet took on the form of an elderly figure. You? Ling Qingzhu was equally stunned as she looked at the 2 figures that had appeared beside her. These figures were none other than Lin Dong's protective divine items, the Ancestral Stone and the Great Wilderness Monument. Lin Dong's situation doesn't seem to be our concern anymore, the Ancestral Stone remarked indifferently. These guys aren't any weaker than the alien demon emperor, the Great Wilderness Monument said in a low voice, eyeing the 2 3rd-grade Supremes ahead. Divine items. The 2 3rd-grade Supremes were utterly shocked as they stared at the Ancestral Stone and the Great Wilderness Monument. A look of greed quickly spread across their faces. Divine items were things that even supreme powerhouses would covet, and now, 2 such treasures had appeared simultaneously before them.